Hello and welcome to Into the Woods with Holly Worton. This podcast has evolved over the 5+ years since it first launched. From now on, I'm going to be talking about deepening your connection with yourself, taking inspired action, and really trusting yourself and your intuition. And also mindset, of course, but mindset of all kinds, not just business mindset. I think. Things are changing for me, as you may have noticed if you've been following me online or listening to this podcast, so anything goes here. I hope you stay along for the ride. Thank you so much for joining us today, and now let's get into this week's episode. Hello and welcome to the Into the Woods podcast, episode 328. This is your host, Holly Worton, and I'm back with another solo episode. Today, I'm going to talk about adventure. If you listened to last week's episode, which is all about planning your year-end review and planning the new year, you know that I've been working on just that. Reviewing my 2019 and thinking about how I want to experience my 2020. So I've been making a list of all the things I want to do in the new year. Some things I've already got booked, they're in the calendar, paid and planned. And I'm looking at other things that I want to add. And I realized that a lot of the activities that I've got planned, things that I've already booked and things that I'm looking at signing up for, are things that satisfy my need for adventure. And this got me thinking, is everyone else planning their adventures for the new year? I suspect not. I think some people are really aware of the importance of adventure and the need for adventure in our lives, but I suspect that a lot of people haven't started actually planning them. And to me, it's really important to plan these things, get them into the calendar to make sure that I give them the importance in terms of priorities and in terms of time and in terms of booking them into my calendar. Otherwise, they won't happen. So in this episode, I invite you to explore how you can add more adventure to your life, even if you're on a budget. I think there are a lot of ways to add adventure, doing little things that don't cost anything. Or, depending on what your budget is, you can do a big expensive adventure. It's all up to you. There's a ton of things you can do. So let's start out by defining what is an adventure. To me, an adventure is any kind of deviation from our normal routine, our normal life, our normal way of doing things. It's something exciting and fun and joyful and different. And that could be anything from taking a new route on the way to work, to walking down a new trail in the forest, to traveling to a new country that you've never been for. There are all kinds of adventures. And again, like I said, there are all kinds of budgets for adventures. So that to me is kind of a broad description of what an adventure is, but really, even the tiniest little things, like exploring a new trail in the woods, can bring such a sense of excitement and joy and adventure. And like I said, adventure is really, really important to me. And if you're listening to this and you're thinking, not really. Yeah, I really don't care about adventure. I want you to stop and think about, when was the last time that you felt a sense of adventure in your life? Like maybe you're so disconnected from it, you don't remember what it feels like. So I invite you, if you're not really connecting with this, pause, think about that. And also think about, when was the last time you did something for the first time? I did a blog post about this years ago. I think it was like 2011 or so. And I'll link to that in the show notes. But I love doing new things. I love trying new things, going new places. It gives me that sense of excitement and joy and adventure. So maybe pause this again and think, when was the last time you did something for the first time? So as I was getting ready for this episode, I was thinking about what adventures I had in 2019. And I'm going to share them with you to give you an idea of the kind of adventures that you can have in your life. Some of these are going to resonate with you, some of these aren't, but these are all things that gave me a sense of adventure. So, for starters, you may know that I'm doing a plant spirit healing apprenticeship, which I signed up for at the end of last year. And one of the first things that we did to get ready for that apprenticeship was we had a drum birthing workshop. Now, I'm not a musical person. I'd certainly never made a musical instrument before, I don't even consider myself to be a crafty kind of person. But we spent an entire afternoon birthing these drums. And these are shamanic drums that we use for shamanic journeying, made out of animal hides and wooden frames, and we put crystals into them, and it was a really, really lovely experience. And I feel like I have such a strong relationship with my drum that I don't think I'd have if I just bought it in a store. Of course, that relationship has come from journeying with the drum for the last 7 or 8 months or so. But that was a huge adventure for me because, again, not crafty, not musical, and I made a drum. That's exciting. Moving on from that, the journeys that I've been doing in my plant spirit healing apprenticeship. Doing shamanic journeys, I know that's kind of inner work because I'm not actually going anywhere, but that's been a huge adventure. Stuff happens in those that I never thought I'd be doing. So that's been an adventure in itself. Earlier this year, I did my second NNAS Gold training. That's the National Navigation Award Scheme. Did that up in Yorkshire. That was fantastic. As always, terrible weather. Not that Yorkshire always has terrible weather, but they specifically seek out poor weather conditions for this particular navigation training because it is an advanced training where you are focusing on low light, like evening navigation, nighttime navigation, and also just poor weather conditions. So it was a big stretch out of my comfort zone. I had never been to that part of Yorkshire before. We walked to places that I'd never seen before. It was really a big adventure. I really loved it. And these are always really small classes. It's a weekend, it's 2 days, and I really, really love them. I really love these classes. I linked to this guy, Mark Reed of Team Walking in the last episode, but I will link to him again in the show notes for this episode. So, navigation course. Earlier this year, I think it was the end of April, beginning of May, I did a plant identification for wild food and foraging course. That was fantastic. We camped in the woods and we identified plants and we foraged and made dinner out of it, and we learned how to use these plants for medicine. And it was such an adventure because it was the first time I'd ever taken a class where I was camping every night. And it was just really, really lovely to share the experience with other people and to learn all kinds of new plant stuff. That was great. Also, my appearance on ITV to talk about my book, that was an adventure. That was the first time I appeared on live TV. That was a big step outside my comfort zone. It was really exciting and I really enjoyed it. Later the year, I went to the Victorious Festival. My publicist had a stand for their authors. I went and I gave a talk. I talked to a tree in front of people. That was a huge step out of my comfort zone because I'd never done that kind of on demand in front of people before in real life. So that was an adventure. Lavender. I went to a lavender farm in my area. That's a really low cost thing. I think it was £2 to get in. One of the last plants, or the last plant that I'm going to be working with on my plant spirit healing apprenticeship was lavender. And so I wanted to go to this lavender farm and really connect with large quantities of lavender, 15 acres of lavender, and connect with the plant spirit there. And that was a really lovely experience. And I'd been to that farm before, but it was a big adventure to me to connect with the lavender in a different way at that farm. The South Downs Way. To me, walking a long distance trail is always an adventure. And I think that's one of the things that I love so much about it, because even though I know, I'm walking from point A to point B, I have these different stages set up, I know where I'm staying every night, it's still an adventure because the trail, you don't know what's going to happen along the way. You don't know who you're going to meet. You don't know what the weather's going to be like. It's such a deep adventure for me. And I think that's one of the reasons why I enjoy walking long distance trails so much, because it's so exciting and adventurous, and I love it. And then I think my most recent adventure was going to Atlanta to speak at She Podcasts Live. I'd never been to Atlanta before. I haven't been to a conference in ages. This is the first She Podcasts conference. Amanda and I were speaking on the main stage. It was really exciting. It was a little step outside my comfort zone because I do love public speaking. But it was a big adventure. I met tons of people I'd never met before. It was really exciting to go to a conference where I knew only a handful of people. And when I say a handful, I think I count them on one hand. I don't think I knew more than 5 people there, so that was super exciting. I got to meet new people. So those were my kind of highlights of my adventures for the year. The adventures that I've got planned for the next year, you won't be surprised, are very naturey things. So if you know me, you might know that ever since ages ago, since 1996, I have been wanting to walk the Camino de Santiago. And that's not happened. And I've been pretty obsessed with it in recent years. I've read, 10 or 15 books on the Camino, other people's stories. I've got a guidebook. I have a friend, Adam Wells, who runs a walking group here in the UK where he talks about the Camino and helps people get prepared for the Camino. I've been really into this, but I just haven't had the time, the space, the money to take a month or 5 weeks off of my life and go to Spain and walk 500 miles. It just hasn't happened. But about 10 days ago, I was on Reddit, on the subreddit for the Camino de Santiago, and someone posted a blog post, and I'll link to this in the show notes, about the Camino Portugués. So if you don't know about the Camino, there are several different Caminos de Santiago that go to Santiago, Spain. The most famous one is the Camino Francés, which starts in France and goes all the way across the top of Spain. That's the most popular one. But there's another one that goes through Portugal. There's another one called the Camino Inglés, which is where people traveling from England to Santiago would walk. And it's, again, a shorter one that goes just through Galicia. And there are other versions of it. The Camino Portugués is about 2 weeks. The Camino Inglés is probably less than a week. The Camino Portugués is the one that I've been obsessed with for the last 10 days or so, ever since I read this blog post. I've since read 3 books about the Camino Portugués. I have planned I'm going to walk it probably March of next year. I am super excited about this. So excited because I feel like I can finally do a version of the Camino without taking a big chunk of time off my life. I do still want to do the Camino Francés, the long one, but not for a couple of years. And I feel like this is going to satisfy my need for that type of adventure soon. I'm also thinking about doing the Camino Inglés later next year, and I'm super excited about that. And I want to write books about both of those because these are lesser known Caminos and people don't know about them as much, and people don't write books about them as much. I also want to do another outdoors course up north in Yorkshire. I'm doing an ethnobotany course, which is, I think, 8 or 9 months over the course of next year. I'm doing a wildlife identification and tracking course. And another thing that I've been wanting to do, and this is different kind of thing, you may know that I do workations for writing my books. One thing that I've always wanted to do is hop on a train, go on a really long train journey, and just use that time to write. So that's something that I've wanted to do for a couple of years now. Had it on my list of things to do this year, didn't do it. I'm going to do it next year. So I'm super excited about that. So all of these adventures that I've mentioned have been kind of big things that I've got planned for next year. And they are things that require significant investment. So those are kind of my big adventures that I've got next year. But in terms of smaller adventures, there are so many things you could do. You could alter your routine in some way. Take a different route to work. Have something different for breakfast. Have something different for lunch, for dinner, something you've never cooked before. Try something new for the first time. Travel somewhere new. And again, travel can be expensive, but just researching a trip can give you that feeling of adventure. So for the last 10 days that I've been researching the Camino Portugués and planning my trip has been so exciting and fulfilling. So just researching a trip, even if you're not going to do it for a while, that can give you that sense of adventure. Reading travel books. In the winter, when I don't do as much walking, I read a ton of travel books about people walking long distance trails, and it's so satisfying for me. It fulfills that need for an adventure. Walking out in nature, walking in the woods, take a new trail. When I first moved to the area that I live in, I loved just turning down a trail that I'd never been down before and just exploring and seeing where it went. Learn something new. You can learn stuff online for free, or you can take a class. You can explore your local area. I've lived here where I'm living now for like 8 years, and there's still a lot of stuff I haven't seen. And that could be exploring in terms of walking, trying a new restaurant, just walking through the neighborhoods. I really like just walking through different neighborhoods in my town sometimes in the evening. Walking down new streets, exploring new places. You could try a new meetup group. Meetup groups are often free, often low cost. So just go online, go on meetup.com, put in your area, find something new to do, meet new people. Try a new hobby. Now that might have a cost involved with it, but often low cost, especially if you go through Meetup. Airbnb also has experiences which aren't super cheap. They're not like meetups, but they can be new things to do. Try a new means of transport. Like if you're used to taking public transport to work, ride your bike or walk for a stretch of it, or take public transport instead of driving. I don't know, try something new. I think these are all ways to kind of break up routine and add adventure into our lives. Wear a new color, try a new style, try a new type of exercise, listen to a new kind of music, listen to a new podcast. Declutter your space, your home, your workspace. That makes space for something new. Decluttering is a weird thing that even though you're getting rid of physical objects, it somehow magically shifts things in your mind and energetically in your life. And I really do believe that it makes space for new stuff, and that could be new adventures, especially if you declutter with the intention of making space for new adventures. And that could be also decluttering your calendar so that you have time for new adventures. Hang out with someone new. So maybe get in touch with a friend you haven't seen in ages, or call a friend you haven't seen in ages, or meet new people through Meetup. Try a new haircut, try a new hairstyle. Like I said earlier, try a new food, try a new restaurant, cook something new, try a new recipe. Try something wildly different from what you normally eat. Volunteer. There are tons of things you can do volunteering that can be like an adventure. And you'll meet new people. Try something that scares you. Try something that's outside of your comfort zone. I think a lot of this sense of adventure comes from doing things that are a little bit scary and that are often outside our comfort zone, but they're really satisfying because they do stretch us in new ways. They help us grow in new ways. And I think adventures are an important part of our personal growth, of our personal development, because they take us outside of our comfort zone. They give us a new perspective on life. They open our mind. They're challenging. They break up our routines. They fill us with that sense of excitement and joy. So I invite you, what are the things that came to mind as I was listing possible adventures? What are the things that came to mind as things that you'd like to try? You could learn a new instrument. And I invite you to sit down and make a list of 50 things that you could do in the next 12 months as adventures and to bring more adventure into your life. And again, they can be something as simple as go walking on a trail near your house and turn down a trail that you've never been down before. They don't have to cost money. They don't have to take a ton of time. Whatever comes to mind. Go camping. If you've been camping before, go camping somewhere new. They don't have to be outdoor stuff, but a lot of my examples are because I like the outdoors. I mentioned, I forget where it was, a couple of episodes ago maybe, that, yes, it was when I was talking about speaking up and using your voice. I mentioned that one of the things that really changed my life in terms of speaking up and expressing myself was doing Toastmasters. Go to Toastmasters. I think it's free for the first couple of visits, and then after that, they will ask you to pay their annual membership fee, which is really reasonable. Go to Toastmasters. That will take you outside of your comfort zone if you're not like an expert in public speaking. So look up things that you can do. And I really, really encourage you to do a list of 50 adventures that you can have in your life in the next 12 months. And I'm saying 50 because I think that'll stretch you. If that sounds like a big number, it's probably not, but it's enough to make you think beyond kind of the basic stuff like, oh, new breakfast, new route to work. So I would like to offer you that challenge. And I would like for you to let me know if you took me up on that challenge And email me and let me know what were some of the things on your list, maybe your top 3 things or the first 3 things you're going to try. And the next thing is, once you've made this list of 50 adventures, put some time in the calendar, block out time in the calendar to do them. Again, some of them are going to be really easy. Like if it's cooking something new for dinner, that's, kind of part of your normal dinner routine. It might just take you a while longer if it's a new recipe. But other things like, going for a walk in the woods down a new trail, that might take longer. So block out the time in your calendar for these first 3 mini adventures and maybe journal about it. Journal about your experiences. Journal about how they make you feel. And ask yourself, do I want to do this again? Do I want to do something similar? Do I want to do something different? Like, how did they make me feel? Do I want to experience more of this feeling? I really think that adding more adventure to our lives is really important for our personal growth and also for our personal satisfaction in life. I love routines. One of the things that really threw me off in the last month and a half or so that I was really busy is that I didn't have my routines. And I thought I was getting back to my routine last week, and then I just crashed kind of. I mean, I didn't burn out, but I just needed some time off. So I had kind of a half work week last week as I was getting into, normal life again. And this week I am finally back on track with my routines. So I do like routines, but I also think it's important to break them up and shake them up because it's shaking up our routines that gives us that sense of adventure. Even if it's just a little thing like having something different for breakfast. I think it's important. I think it makes us think differently. It makes us have that new perspective. And again, the breakfast example, I know that sounds silly, but try it. Try something new for dinner. So, 50 things to do, 50 adventures, and good luck. And please let me know how it goes. I really, really want to hear from you about this and see what you think, what you enjoyed, what you're looking forward to, and what if it also maybe write down what have been your adventures for this year, because I think it's important to acknowledge the little adventures that we're already having, that we're already creating for ourselves, in addition to planning new ones for the new year. So that's all for now. I hope you found this interesting and useful. I have put up for the last episode, which was about how to do your year-end review and plan your new year, I've put up in the Patreon a list of journal prompts. So I put up the questions that I kind of included during the episode, but I've also included my extended list of journaling prompts for wrapping up your year-end review and also planning your new year. So if you're a Patreon, you can get that in Patreon. If you're not yet a Patreon, I would love to have you support me there. Membership starts at just $1 a month, and you get access to all kinds of things, including those journal prompts, which I think are super useful. So if you head over to patreon.com, and that's patreon.com/Holly Worton, you can join me there. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on whatever app you're listening to this on. And remember to visit hollywharton.com/328 for the show notes on this episode. Thank you. Thanks so much for listening to Into the Woods with Holly Worton. You can find more information about today's episode, including links for topics that were discussed, at hollywharton.com. That's HOLLYWORTON.com. If you'd like to connect with other listeners and get support on your journey, I would love for you to join my private community on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Holly Worton. That's patreon.com/Holly Worton. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to seeing you next week.